Through the years, I've conducted many anger workshops and I've done some writing and other speaking on the topic of anger management. And one of the things that guys like me like to do is we like to come up with explanations about how to handle anger properly and how to maintain your decorum in the midst of a very difficult situation. And we have all sorts of good ideas that will explain how that can play out. Now, here's the rub. What happens when you go back to your place of living, whether it's in your home setting or with extended family members or people you work with or others beyond that, and you try those really excellent guidelines and it just doesn't work? One of the words I like to use that's associated with anger management, of course, is the word assertiveness. Now, when you feel angry, you're wanting to stand firmly upon your convictions, you want to talk about your needs. You can do it in a really ugly way, and you can be aggressive. You can hold it in and suppress it. You can be passive aggressive in the way that you manage your anger, or you can go in that assertive direction. Now, let's suppose that you'll come back to me and you'll say, okay, Carter, I did the checklist on my assertiveness. And then I may ask, okay, so what's your checklist? And you say, well, I was clear and concise in the way that I spoke. Okay, check. And then you can say, my tone of voice was very reasonable and steady. All right, check again. And you can say that I remained open-minded and reasonable in the way that I presented my thoughts and feelings. Okay, check. And then you might say, and I really was trying to listen well because I know it can lead to a two-way conversation. I was willing to do that. Once again, check. And then you can say, and then I tried to establish my consequences or stipulations in a fair way. I wasn't being harsh or haughty. I think I was being very common sense based. And it's like, hey, great, way to go. And then your next comment is, but the other person just wasn't having it. Has that ever happened to you? You have some strain, you have some stress, you have some tension, and as best you can, you're trying to maintain yourself in a clean and proper way. And yet, there are many times, no matter how good you are in managing yourself, you're going to bump into some folks that'll just more or less have the implication that says, I don't care what you're thinking. I don't think there's anything right about you. And so it may be that even in the midst of your good intentions, that other person may come back to you and say, you're still the problem. Or, I don't care what you say, you're wrong. And that other person, of course, is going to be thinking, which means I'm right. And the sooner you figure that out, the better off we're going to be. Or, you are so going to pay for standing up to me. Nobody does something like that. Has that ever happened to you? Or maybe the person that you're trying to have this proper assertive anger with, they just go into shutdown mode, or they withdraw and they won't give you the time of day. So here you are trying to build a bridge. You realize, we're going to have conflict. That doesn't threaten me. We can talk about the conflict. We can each be very fair in doing so. And then you get this terrible kind of reaction from the other person. What are you going to do? Well, first, let's understand what it is that you're dealing with when you have this assertiveness and it just comes back void. Basically, it tells me anyway that you're dealing probably with a very high controlling person. And so by you calling them out on something, you're asking them to lay down their sense of control, their agenda, and consider something different. Is the fact that they won't do that. It's like, no, I have to stay in control. Or you're dealing with somebody who has very tight defenses already established. And defensiveness means fear. And so they're threatened by the differentness that you bring to the equation. Now, of course, they won't say that, but that's exactly what's going on. Or it could be that this is a person that just has a lot of deeply embedded insecurity. So for you to say, hey, things are not exactly working real well, that catches them off guard in a bad sort of way. Or maybe you're just dealing with somebody who's just got a real raw egotism that's leading the way. They're very selfish and they couldn't care less about anybody's perspective other than their own. Now, when you get to this place where you try to be assertive and it doesn't work out very well, there are certain mistakes that sometimes you can make. And the first one is you take their poor response personally. Now, I know most folks think, well, of course I'm taking it personally because I'm the one in the equation with them. And when I am implying, well, you need not to take it personally, I'm starting with the assumption that if you're trying to be assertive and clean and fair-minded in the way that you establish your beliefs and consequences, and the other person isn't buying it, there's a real high probability you're not the only person they've ever done this with. Now, they may say otherwise, but you're a player on the stage and you're simply seeing what's already on the inside of them, and it's going to remain on the inside of them regardless of who you are. And so it's not about you, even though it feels like it's about you in the moment. It illustrates that this is a troubled person who just doesn't know how to do life very well. Or another mistake that you can make when this person stubbornly refuses to appreciate your efforts is sometimes you can get caught in the flow of their very poor reactions in anger. So let's suppose that you establish, here's my feeling, this is what I believe, I'm trying to talk with you about my boundaries, and you think you're doing a pretty good job, and they just yell at you, or they start cursing, or they begin to be argumentative. Well, how many times have you kind of lost it? And before you know it, you're talking every bit as ugly right back at them as they are at you. That's what I mean when I say you get caught in the flow. It becomes control, counter control. And you can keep doing that if you want, but I think you and I would both agree it doesn't work very well, and you just wind up feeling awful at the end of it. Sometimes you can make the mistake of letting yourself feel totally intimidated. Some people, when they try to be appropriate and the other person isn't taking any of it at all, they start crying, or they just begin waffling and apologizing for what they say. Or maybe they just kind of back down. It's like, okay, I didn't really mean it. Sorry. And that's always a possibility, but I don't think that's the appropriate way. Sometimes when you run into this non-cooperative person, you can just suppress your thoughts and feelings and needs and then go behind the scenes and act out. That's a possibility. Now, there's what I refer to as a no guarantees approach towards assertiveness. Based on everything that I've been saying, you can surmise there are just times when you can be picture perfect in the way that you approach folks, and they just may not respond well at all. And so let's go with the idea that assertiveness is not managed in the way that we like to draw it up for the purpose of controlling the other person. Assertiveness is assertiveness because it means you're being true to yourself. Many times people make the mistake of saying, I tried to be assertive and it didn't work, which means that other person didn't change their mind. Assertiveness works when you stand firmly for who you are, and you hold your ground when necessary, and you don't back away from being you. So there are a few thoughts as we wrap up here that go along with this no guarantees approach to assertiveness. And that is, first, I want you to check your belief system. I want you to check your principles and values that you stand with. Do you make sense? And if the answer is yes, then proceed. Just stick with your good beliefs and your good stipulations. And then a second thought is, as you have this no guarantees approach, say what needs to be said, but don't oversay it. Because the more you just repeat yourself, and typically you'll find that it's easy for that to happen, you're trying to put on a sales pitch with usually not a very good tone of voice, and it just gets you deeper and deeper into your hole. Say what needs to be said. If it needs an explanation, give an explanation once, and then be done. And then a third thought is, by all means, do not go after that stubborn person with loaded questions. Why are you doing this? Why do you always have to respond like that to me? I hate it when you do that, because all you're doing is you're playing into the power play, and you automatically lose by virtue of just jumping into the game in the first place. And then basically we're going to say, let your sense of resolve be illustrated behaviorally. Even if the other person doesn't like verbally what you're saying, it's like, well, I've explained myself to you. I've talked with you about my needs, my feelings. Obviously, you don't appreciate it, but my assertiveness still works in the sense that I'm going to act upon what I need to do. And if you like it, that would be wonderful. If you don't, I'm holding my ground. So the no guarantees approach towards assertiveness starts with one unfortunate truth, and that is some people really work hard to be mature, and I hope that would be you, and then other folks don't. And what's worse is some folks declare themselves to be highly mature, but in their immaturity, they can't manage their anger and conflict very well. And so that makes it even worse because there's just an oblivion they're operating with. And so, you're going to get blamed and all like that, but there it is. Levels of maturity are going to change from one person to another. I'm hoping that as you maintain a sense of maturity and decency in your assertion, even if it doesn't work, in the sense that the other person won't agree with you, we're just going to say, there's no guarantee how people are going to take me, but I will do this. I'm going to remain true to me. If you give me permission, thank you. If you don't, I'm going to do that anyway. Now, I hope you find value in these videos. I thoroughly enjoy talking them out with you, and I hope that this is something that you can use in your own personal life. I would invite you to go beneath the video here and subscribe to our channel. Just know that I really enjoy being a part of your growth mode, and beneath the video, I'm going to have other links to some resources and also to books and online workshops, things like that. So thanks for letting me be a part of your repertoire of things that you draw upon as you try to grow and manage life cleanly, and I take it very seriously. So I shall see you next time.